I'm going to miss that intro. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver, and we got a lot to talk about today. We got some playoff odds. We got some teams in the AFC. You got 5 teams fighting for 2 playoff spots. In the NFC, you have 2 teams fighting for 1 playoff spot, and in both conferences, 1 division has not been decided, the NFC West and the AFC East. So a lot to discuss in regards to the playoffs. I'm going to go over each team that's on the outside looking at the playoffs. I'm going to look at their chances and what has to happen in order for them to get into the tournament, which begins next weekend. But it is Week 18, the final weekend of the 2021 NFL season, and I greatly look forward to talking about everything that's going to be going on in that regard. Unfortunately, I have to start the show the way I've been starting the last couple of shows, and that is with one Antonia Brown, who is no longer a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. And as Adam Schefter reported about an hour and a half ago, he, not surprisingly, was not claimed by any of the other 31 teams. And so he is now officially a free agent and likely will be forever. So Antonia Brown was on a podcast. Let me make sure I get the name right. The Full Send podcast, and it was wild, as one might expect it to be for Antonia Brown. I mean, nothing can be normal with this guy. So he went on about a number of things, and I definitely want to touch on the last 2, but let's talk about each thing he said. So I'll read you some of the quotes. We don't have the sound bites, but I'll read you the quotes. So he was asked if he wants to play football again. And AB said, quote, "Of course, man. It's my passion. It's what I do, man. Every year is a fresh start, a new year. I still like to get in shape. I still like to compete, and it's just getting started." Obviously, we had some stuff that went on. It's all about integrity and handling people the right way. And, you know, AB is a football first. I'm a football player first. That's my business. Okay. So let's I'm going to react to each thing one by one. So he's a football player first, and he said something kind of similar to that about a week before the whole thing happened, where he, stripped down half naked, walking off the field at MetLife Stadium. And so Antonio Brown is saying, "I'm a football player first." And he said about a week ago, like, the media, y'all are the ones causing all the distractions and the noise and whatnot. And my response is, look, I have issues with the media, but they're just reporting what's going on. They're just reporting what you're doing, Antonio. He's speaking in third person, which is weird. And he's also talking about, it's just getting started. What's just getting started? Your career? Your legacy? Tearing apart teams? Like, what's just getting started? I mean, Antonio Brown's been in the NFL for over a decade now. Like, what's getting started? So there's that. And, he said we had some stuff that went on. It's all about integrity and handling people the right way. I can't think of an NFL player. I can't think of one that has less integrity and handles people worse in the organization than Antonia Brown. Are you kidding me? How he handled people in Pittsburgh, Oakland, New England, Tampa Bay. As I said yesterday, is kind of a pattern here. It's like the Urban Meyer. If everywhere you go, there's a controversy, who's the common denominator? If everywhere Antonio Brown goes, there's some sort of drama, or he's fighting with somebody, who's the common denominator? So that's the first quote. He wanted to say, quote, "Imagine the guys you come to battle with, and while your freaking ankles bleeped, you can barely run. And the guy you think has your back, this your team. These the guys who you flew in here with to do a mission. They knew my situation before we even came. I communicated with the coach, the trainers, everyone know, And you get there and you're battling with them. The guy tells you that because you can't go to war with him, he tells you to get the F out of there. What do you want me to do? Bro, I'm an alpha male. If you discriminate on my public image and my name, at that point, it's F you too professionally." So he's obviously talking about Bruce Arians, and he's talking about the training staff in Tampa Bay. Well, here's the problem. The trainers in Tampa Bay cleared him to play. And I didn't hear a word about Antonio Brown's ankle. When against the Carolina Panthers, he had over 100 yards. I'm just saying. Over 100 yards against the Carolina Panthers when the Buccaneers won by 26 points over Carolina on 10 catches. I didn't hear anything about the ankle then. But it's only a problem when against the New York Jets, Antonio Brown has a grand total of 3 catches for 26 yards. Now the ankle's a problem, right? Now the ankle's a problem when I'm not getting my targets on my catches. Now it's an issue. Now I'm going to throw a tantrum on the sideline. He continued, quote, so in the midst of the game, these guys telling me, get in. I'm already on the bench. I'm telling them like, yo, my ankle's done, man. That's all I got. The guy said, get the F out of here. You're done with cutting his throat. I discussed this yesterday. Brown continued mimicking the gesture he claimed a Buccaneers coach made to him. At that point, bro, I'm taking your effing logos off. I don't want to hear that bleep. I'm out of here. So, and I discussed this yesterday. He accused Bruce Arians or another Buccaneers coach, I can't remember who it was specifically, of doing the throat slash gesture, saying, get the F out of here. And so, again, Antonia Brown has had a legacy and a history of lying. So NFL Films is everywhere. There are cameras everywhere in the stadium. Network cameras, fans. I mean, everybody's got a phone in their pocket nowadays, right? Fans got their phones. Look into their phones. Fox broadcasts the game. Look into Fox's coverage and what they broadcast because they're filming the sidelines. Look, track Antonio Brown and see if a coach does the throat slashing gesture. Because thus far, I've heard absolutely nothing in that regard except from Antonio Brown. All right. He was asked about Tom Brady. This is where it's really funny. This is where it's hilarious. So he's asked about Tom Brady. He said, quote, it's nothing personal, man. Tom is actually my friend, one of my close friends. Some people have a different definition of friend. When I say you're my friend, that means I have your back. To me, though, that's what a friend means. Tom Brady's my friend. Why? Because I'm a good football player. He needs me to play football, right? These guys calling me to win the Super Bowl. People have different meanings of what friendship is. So basically, he's saying, I'm loyal to Tom. But Tom is only loyal to me because of what I can do on the football field. Now, after Bruce Arians announced that Antonio Brown is no longer a Buccaneer, what did Tom Brady do? Express compassion for Antonio Brown. That's what a friend does. A friend doesn't bail out his team and bail out, if we're going to talk individuals, Tom Brady on the sideline with a temper tantrum as the game is being played and you're down 2 touchdowns. A friend is there for another friend. We talk about in the NFL, the brotherhood, right? That's what they all talk about. They're around their teammates and their coaches more than they're around their own families. They have to have a brotherhood. They have to have that sort of camaraderie. They don't have to necessarily be like besties or anything, but they got to know, hey, I got your back, you got my back. And Antonio Brown is basically saying, yeah, Tom Brady didn't have my back. What? Of all the people in the National Football League, nobody has had Antonio Brown's back more than Tom Brady. So it is hilarious to me that AB saying, yeah, Tom didn't have my back. What? He didn't have to bring you to New England after Oakland cut you. And here's the best part. Here's the best part. I'll get to the comments in just a second, but here's the best part. If Tom Brady's my boy, why am I playing for earning salary? You know my boy, though, right? Gronkowski's his boy, right? How much did he get paid? So why is AB on a prove-it deal? Again, he's speaking in third person. Why is AB on a prove-it deal and not Gronk? Well, it could be possibly, Antonio, because Rob Gronkowski is recognized by some as arguably the greatest tight end of all time. He also has 4 Super Bowl rings. He's also been there for Tom. Maybe not physically. He's had his injury struggles, but that happens. It's football. But as far as emotionally as a teammate, Gronk's there for Tom. Yeah, you're right on that, AB. But why is Gronk not on a prove-it deal and you are? Well, as they say, mirrors do work. Because it's your fault, AB. You got traded out of Pittsburgh and got a huge deal by the Raiders. If he had just kept his mouth shut during training camp and not cause all the chaos that he did with the helmet issue and the frostbitten feet and all this and fighting with Gruden and fighting with Mayock and calling Mayock certain names at training camp, if he keeps his mouth shut. As a matter of fact, all that happened, he was still on the Raiders. The day he was released, he could have waited just a couple days till the start of the 2019 NFL season. If he doesn't say a word, he's guaranteed $30 million. Guaranteed. There's nothing. Guaranteed. The Raiders have to pay him that amount of money if he just says nothing. But he asked for his release. So he cost himself all that money. So could it possibly be that Antonia Brown was mad about the incentives and, as a matter of fact, reportedly asked the Buccaneers to convert his bonus into guaranteed money? Could it possibly be because Antonia Brown hasn't been smart with his money? Maybe. I mean, I'm not one that likes to go into people's bank accounts and stuff, but why is he so passionate about money now? When the bonus money he's going to make or could have made with the Buccaneers wouldn't even sniffed the money he would have made with the Raiders. Oh, okay. So he's saying, why is Gronk going to prove a deal? And I'm because Antonio Brown, you got a lot to prove. Nobody's questioning what you can do in the football field. Nobody. Your resume on the field speaks for itself. As I've said time and time again on this show, had he stayed in Pittsburgh and not, blown up the organization, he wasn't going to break Jerry Rice's records. He was going to threaten him. On the pace he was on, the numbers he was putting up, oh yeah, those records would have been in jeopardy. Nobody's questioning what Antonio Brown still can do on the football field. His talent is why he's gotten opportunity after opportunity. His talent is one of the reasons that Tom Brady was like, guys, let's give him a shot. I can make him work. And so, it's just funny that he asked why he's on a prove-it deal. Well, because you got everything to prove. Because you blew up a locker room in Pittsburgh, and you blew up a locker room in Oakland, and you blew up a locker room in New England. Well, if someone tells you who they are, believe them, as the old Maya Angelou quote goes, that's 3 stops with the same ending. Not to mention your record off the field, which I don't even have enough time to get into today. That's why you're on a prove-it deal. Has nothing to do with your talent. Has everything to do with the fact, can you not blow up a team? Can you not have episodes like you had on the sideline at MetLife Stadium? That's what you're there to prove. You couldn't handle it. That's why he was on a prove-it deal. And the final point, and this is just, it's a joke. So he was also asked, and I'm surprised that the podcast host went here. Genuinely. So he was asked point blank, basically, if he had CTE, which is, of course, has been something that's been the topic of much discussion as many of the studies have come out. And, the NFL, matter of fact, the late John Madden tried to, he was a part of the safety committee, wants to change some of the rules so that players don't get this horrible, horrible disease. So he's asked about CTE. And Antonio Brown responds, quote, CTE, you can't scan a person for CTE till they're dead, first off. That is true. But then he says, so how are you going to say a player that's living in real time, who's putting up real stats, who's standing for real purposes, who's doing real things, got CTE? Bro, I'm a wide receiver. What wide receiver has CTE? Vincent Jackson? You hear the Tampa Bay Bucks talk about Vincent Jackson's CTE? And then he said, I played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl last year, and they had a player who died from what, Bob? I'm guessing you mean CTE, the podcast host replied. Brown responded, quote, no, don't guess I mean. It's factual. You only contract CTE when you die, bro. So what are you asking me what I got when I'm living? That's got to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard Antonio Brown say. And he says some dumb stuff. You can only contract CTE when you die. No. Guys have it, unfortunately, when they're living. Vincent Jackson, who Antonio Brown brought up, yeah, he had CTE. Ask his family. Ask his wife about how Vincent Jackson's behavior and everything just flipped the last year of his life before he died tragically earlier this year. Last year. CTE absolutely happens in living people. You can't get CTE when you die. You can't get anything when you die. You're dead. I mean, that's what? He's not even making sense. He sounds delusional. I've never seen anything like this. Never. Sarah, I got nothing. So I'll see if the people in the comments do. And so far, got a couple comments from my man Barry. He says, quote, my biggest issue with AB is the people that exploit this guy and enable this behavior because he's talented. AB is about his money, not paying people what they owe. We need to say no to him. To bash Brady after the man put you in his house and put his rep on the line for you, Brady's a real one. AB is about as real as the camera that's on him for that period. Yep. See, part of me feels bad for him. Part of me doesn't feel bad for him. The guy's delusional. I mean, that's honestly my biggest takeaway. So he brings up his ankle, but then he brings up his money. Well, it can't be both. Either your ankle is hurting or you wanted more targets to get more money. One or the other. So I don't believe a word Antonia Brown said in this podcast interview. And to the people of this podcast and of any network or podcast or anybody who wants to interview Antonia Brown and give him a platform, stop. You're enabling him. Matter of fact, I watched it. The host on that show were like, yeah, you're right, AB. That's the issue. Nobody has ever told him no. Ever. AB thinks he can get away with the behavior that he's exhibited. And for the most part, for most of his career, he's been right. He's done crappy stuff after more crappy stuff and keeps getting signed, keeps getting contracts with new NFL teams. That was the last straw. He's never playing in the National Football League again. So when you got his followers on social media, when you got his enablers, his supporters say, yeah, you're right, AB, you tell the NFL, you tell Brady, you tell it. I'm like, hey, Antonia Brown supporters, Tom Brady and Bruce Arians are the only reason that Antonia Brown was even on a team this year. Last year, who was talking about signing Antonia Brown? I'm waiting. Tampa Bay, that's it. Because one Tom Brady went to bat for Antonia Brown. And when it was all said and done, he blew it. It's unbelievable. I don't even know. I don't even know what there is to say about this guy. Again, T.O. was bad. People comparing Antonia Brown to T.O. and even Chad Ochocinco. Both were locker room problems. Nothing compared to this guy. Nothing. I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't know how those who support AB defend him. I really don't. You have some sort of unknown talent that I don't possess to defend the indefensible. Unreal. Okay. Let's try and transition from that the best we can. Week 18 of the 2021 National Football League regular season is this weekend. We got 2 games tomorrow on Saturday. We got 14 games on Sunday. And while not much is to be decided in the doubleheader tomorrow on ABC and ESPN, it still does, to a certain degree, impact seeding. And so, before I even get into my predictions, which I can't wait to make, before I even get my predictions, and I'll go ahead and start the background music right now, let's look at all the teams that are on the outside looking in at the playoffs and their chances and what has to happen in order for them to get in. So let's make that happen. Turn this volume down just a little bit. All right, let's look first at the Indianapolis Colts. In order for the Indianapolis Colts to get in the playoffs, the easiest way to get in, beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, which, many teams have done this season. They're 2-14. If by some crazy chance they don't beat Jacksonville, their goose isn't cooked. But a lot would have to happen. First of all, they'd have to hope for a Pittsburgh Steelers loss, a Los Angeles Chargers loss, and a Miami Dolphins win. If that happens, the Colts are in the playoffs. And something that's very interesting and has been widely discussed, the Colts, they haven't beaten Jacksonville at Jacksonville since 2014. Very interesting. That's got to keep your eye out on that. That's 6 straight losses to Jacksonville. Can't explain it. Don't understand it. But it's true. The Colts have not beaten the Jaguars since 2014, so keep your eye on that. Let's look at the Chargers. The Chargers is very simple. Beat the Raiders or tie the Raiders, and you're in. You lose, you can't get any help that would get you in the playoffs. That's it. Like that would be it for the LA Chargers as far as their playoff chances. So you have to beat the Las Vegas Raiders. If you do, you're in. If you tie the Las Vegas Raiders, you're still in. If you lose, good night, your season's over. Let's look at the Raiders. They got quite a few opportunities and scenarios that could play out in order for them to get into the postseason. The most simple, beat the Chargers. The second, tie the Chargers and have the Indianapolis Colts lose. Or the final thing that would have to happen is the Colts would have to lose and the Steelers would also have to lose. And so that's the Raiders scenario. Let's look at the Steelers. A lot has to happen in order for the Pittsburgh Steelers to get in the playoffs because unlike the Colts, Chargers, and Raiders, they do not control their own destiny. In order for the Pittsburgh Steelers to get into the 2021 postseason, they would have to first beat the Baltimore Ravens and then hope for an Indianapolis loss and hope that the Los Angeles Chargers and the Las Vegas Raiders, that game does not end in a tie. So there has to be a winner between one of those two. So if Pittsburgh beats the Ravens and Indianapolis, loses to the Jaguars, and the Chargers-Raiders game does not end in a tie, which in all likelihood that won't be the case, the Steelers are in the playoffs. Looking at the Steelers' opponent, the Baltimore Ravens, in order for them to get in, like Pittsburgh, a lot has to go their way. They have to, of course, beat the Steelers, then hope for a Colts loss, a Chargers loss, and a Dolphins loss. So 4 things have to happen in order for the Ravens to get in, sitting at 8-8. And by the way, Lamar Jackson will not play. Tyler Huntley will start once again at quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I'll go to the NFC in just a second, but let's look at the number 1 seed. Because unbelievably, 4 teams in the AFC still have a chance, a mathematical chance, to earn the number 1 seed, the top seed in the AFC, and earn a first-round bye. Starting with the team that holds it right now, and the only team that controls their own destiny, and that is the Tennessee Titans. In order to clinch the number 1 seed, the most simple form to clinch that, beat the Houston Texans. They do that, they're locked in, and they get a first-round bye. They get next week off. If they don't beat Houston, they're going to need some help. The second possibility would be for the Chiefs to lose, the Bengals to lose, and the Patriots to lose. The third possibility is for the Chiefs and Bengals to lose and for the Bills to win. But again, Tennessee just beat the Texans. You don't have to worry about any of this. The Kansas City Chiefs have only one scenario for them to earn that top seed. It's fairly simple. They have to beat the Denver Broncos tomorrow and hope for a Titans loss. If that happens, Kansas City, for the second straight year, will be the top seed in the AFC. The Bengals. Did we ever think we'd be talking about this? The Cincinnati Bengals still have a shot at the number 1 seed. In order for them to clinch it, they would have to beat the Cleveland Browns and then hope for a Titans, Chiefs, and Patriots loss. The second possibility is to beat the Browns, of course, and then hope for a Titans loss, a Chiefs loss, and a Bills win. So that's the 2 possibilities, the 2 scenarios that the Cincinnati Bengals would earn the top seed in the AFC. And finally, this is mind-blowing. The New England Patriots could drop to the 7 seed, the last team in the playoffs, or they could get a first-round bye and have the best record in the AFC. But for that to happen, they would have to beat the Dolphins and hope for a Bills, Titans, and Chiefs loss. That's the only way for them to clinch the number 1 seed. They can still win the division. For that to happen, they would have to beat the Dolphins and hope for a Bills loss. So their shot to win the AFC East, very much alive. To clinch the number 1 seed, a lot has to happen. A lot has to happen. Chances are slim there. For the Bills, incredibly, the Bills lead the AFC East, yet the Patriots, due to some tiebreakers, still are alive for the number 1 seed. The Bills are not, but the Bills can still clinch the AFC East. 2 scenarios, very simple. If they beat the Jets or if the Patriots lose. That simple. Let's transition now to the NFC. 2 playoff hopefuls fighting for 1 spot, starting with the 49ers. In order for the San Francisco 49ers to get into the playoffs, they would have to win or tie against the Los Angeles Rams. If that does not happen, they will have to hope for the New Orleans Saints to lose or tie the Atlanta Falcons. So that's the 49ers. For the Saints, theirs is fairly simple. Win against Atlanta and hope for a San Francisco loss. If that happens, the New Orleans Saints and the team that started 4 quarterbacks this year, with Taysom Hill right now as their guy, would be in the playoffs. And then finally, last playoff scenarios here, the NFC West, which is has yet to be clinched. Are we surprised? It's the best division in football. For the Rams to win the NFC West, they would have to beat the 49ers or tie the 49ers, or hope for a Cardinals loss or tie against the Seattle Seahawks. So for San Francisco, just beat for the Rams, just beat San Francisco, you win the division. If that doesn't happen, pray that Arizona loses or ties, of course. The tie does come into play, and you win the NFC West. Finally, for the Cardinals, who are still alive for the division, they got a big win over my Cowboys last week. For the Cardinals to win the NFC West, only one thing can happen. They have to beat the Seahawks and hope for a Rams loss. So there you go. That has to happen in order for the Arizona Cardinals to get into the postseason. It's crazy at how wild this really is. It's crazy when you look at just the NFL and the parity this season. And just how they've been able to maintain this really for the last 15 years. We haven't had a back-to-back Super Bowl champion since the 2004 season, when the New England Patriots won their second straight Super Bowl. Of course, Tom Brady is trying to do that for a second consecutive year. So that's the not really playoff odds, but the playoff scenarios. So in the AFC, you got 5 teams fighting for 2 spots. So it's chaos. It's absolute chaos. But really, if you look at it, if the Colts beat the Jaguars, it really kind of takes 2 teams off the board right there. And then it'll come down to the Chargers-Raiders game at night. And then the NFC, it's fairly simple as well. You got the Saints and the 49ers, 2 teams on the outside looking in, but both have a chance to get in the playoffs. The 49ers control their own destiny. The Saints do not. But is it out of the question to think the Saints could beat the Falcons and the 49ers could lose to the Rams? I don't think so. Not at all. And so now, Week 18, the final week of the regular season, my final prediction show of the regular season. It will include my upset of the week and my segment I debuted this year, If I Were a Betting Man. So here we go. Week 18. We're going to start with the 2 games that will be played tomorrow, starting with the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Denver Broncos. That game will be at 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific time on ABC and ESPN. Kansas City, big road favorites at -10.5. So for Denver, Teddy Bridgewater has been shut down for the season. Not surprising. He had a scary injury a few weeks back. And Drew Lock has come in, and for the second straight year, Drew Lock has been an absolute mess. It's not been good. For the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, they are still fighting to get that number 1 seed. They suffered a pretty tough loss last week at the hands of the Cincinnati Bengals. So they no longer control their own destiny. It's a division matchup. Denver has come close on a couple of occasions to beating Kansas City, but I think when it's all said and done, the Kansas City Chiefs will win, and they will cover the spread by a score of 31-14. Because look, this Chiefs defense, they got shown up by Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. They did. So you're going against a Broncos team that, yes, has a very talented receiving group, but also they got a bad quarterback. He's bad. Like, Drew Lock is not a starter in the NFL. He's just not. I know he's a second rounder a few years back, not a starter in the NFL. And so I think the Chiefs will win this game and hope for some stuff to happen in order to get the AFC's top seed. I have a great comment. It sums it up. My man John Rivera, shout out to him, Fan Perspective Podcast. He's got the popcorn emoji. Get your popcorn ready because it is going to be fun. So that's one game out of the way. The second game involves my Dallas Cowboys taking on our division rival, our arch rival, the Philadelphia Eagles. Both teams are in the playoffs. Dallas, of course, has clinched the NFC East, and Dallas on the road is favored -4. That sounds about right because Philadelphia has 16 players on the COVID list. But as for Dallas, they're going to be pretty shorthanded as well because you got Tyron Smith, Anthony Brown, and, worst of all, Micah Parsons. All three are on the COVID-19 list. You also have guys like Tony Pollard, who's out. And so you have Trayvon Diggs is out with an illness. We don't know for certain, but he's not been put on the COVID list. But Trayvon Diggs is out with a non-COVID related illness. And so going to Philadelphia, a team that can run it down your throat, I got the Dallas Cowboys winning 27-20. I think it's a close game. I think it comes down to the wire. And I think Mike McCarthy plays his starters the whole game. I think Dak Prescott plays the whole game. Mike made it clear. I got issues with a lot of Mike's decision-making, but this is one I agree with. That's a tough loss to the Arizona Cardinals last week. You want to go in the playoffs with something to feel good about yourself. Dallas has a 93% chance of being the 4 seed. Win or lose this, lose this game, they're locked in at 4. But win this game, they're still probably going to be the 4 seed. But I think Dallas wins this game 27-20 and finishes with the record that I predicted them to finish with before the season started: 12 wins, 5 losses, and sweeping the NFC East, which I also said they would do before the season started, at 6-0. No other team in the National Football League will be able to say that. Let's go to Sunday. You've got the Cleveland Browns hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. Did we ever think that before this season started, the team that would be locked in the playoffs in this game would be the Bengals, and the team with no chance would be the Browns? Not my wildest dreams did I ever think that would be the case, but it is. Joe Burrow will not play. Zach Taylor said, I'm going to give him the week off. He's dealing with somewhat of a knee issue. Give him the week off. Have him ready. We've already clinched the division going into the playoffs. And so for that reason, and by the way, Baker Mayfield also not playing, the Browns are favored -6. That's a spread that I think I agree with. I think that's perfect because that's what I have the final score at, 23-17. The Browns win over the Bengals because, look, Cleveland, what do they do better than every team pretty much outside of Philadelphia? They run the football. Nick Chubb, who might be dealing with an injury. I don't know what happened on Monday night the other day. You've got Dearness Johnson, who's a borderline elite running back. He's the best number 3 back in the National Football League. And so Cincinnati, yes, as I detailed earlier, they still have a chance to be the number 1 seed. Clearly, they don't care about that. And so Joe Burrow not going to play. Case Keenum will play. Case Keenum should have started a lot of these games for Cleveland. Browns win and are right at the spread. They do cover. Spread -6. Browns win by 6, 23-17. Let's go to a game that actually means absolutely nothing. The Green Bay Packers taking on the Detroit Lions. Green Bay has clinched the number 1 seed. Obviously, Detroit's could have the number 1 pick when it's all said and done. For Matt LaFleur, he was talking about Aaron Rodgers, and they were asking him, is he going to play or not? And by Matt LaFleur's verbiage, it sounded like Aaron kind of talked me into playing him. Like, Aaron's like, coach, play me. So Aaron won't play the whole game, we assume, certainly with the toe injury. Aaron Rodgers will play a little bit. Jordan Love will get some snaps. You're playing a bad Lions team that has nothing to play for. Maybe some kneecaps will be bitten. I hope not. I don't want injuries to an elite team going into the playoffs. And so I think Green Bay finishes off the Detroit Lions, sweeps them yet again, and Green Bay wins easily 34-14. In a game they are favored -3.5, which I think that spread should be a little bigger. There's some big spreads this week for it to be Week 18. I figured the Packers would be favored by a little more than -3.5. I almost had this on if I were a betting man, but because the starters aren't going to play, I'll back off. Because look, if I were a betting man, that's a question if, keyword. And if I were, I wouldn't bet this game. Let's stick in the NFC North. Let's be quick on this one because this game means nothing because you got two non-playoff teams. The Chicago Bears, who Matt Nagy announced Andy Dalton's going to start, and the Minnesota Vikings, who it sounds like Kirk Cousins is going to start. I'm going to take Minnesota to win this game 20-17. At the end of the day, look, Mike Zimmer's going to get fired after this season, I believe. He's lost the locker room. They're out of the playoffs. Their goose is cooked. But I think Minnesota finishes off the regular season the right way. They finish 8-9 and win 20-17 over the Bears. Another meaningless game. Just getting the meaningless ones out of the way, guys. I'm just trying to get this out of the way before we get into the big ones. The Washington football team, and thank God this is the last time I'm ever going to say this on a prediction show. The Washington football team taking on the New York Giants. You don't know how bad I wanted to pick the Giants to win this game just because it would be so fitting. Because Washington, with the old team name, the last game they ever played with that team name, they lost by 4 touchdowns to the Cowboys in 2019. So I would love that to be the same case against the New York Giants. The problem is Mike Glennon's going to start, and Mike Glennon should not be in the NFL. He's horrible. He struggles to throw for 100 yards a game. I won't even read his numbers from the Giants' loss to the Bears. Not even going to read them. Not worth it. And so, unfortunately, Washington, the dysfunctional organization they are, the cruddy stadium they have, and probably one of the worst owners in sports, not probably, he is, Dan Snyder. I don't want Washington to win. I think they will, 16-14, and Washington fans can get geared up and get ready for February 2nd when the new team name will be revealed, and the New York Giants will go into a complete rebuild. Who knows if they'll fire Joe Judge. They should move on from Daniel Jones. It's time to find a new quarterback. It doesn't work. And so I think the Washington football team was an ugly game, 16-14. Now, here we go. These are games that matter. The Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Baltimore Ravens on the road. Now, of course, Pittsburgh kept their playoff hopes alive. They beat the Cleveland Browns last week on Monday Night Football. For the Ravens, they were dealt another tough loss. Lamar Jackson, once again, with that ankle injury, is out for this game, according to John Harbaugh. Tyler Huntley, who has been very, very productive in relief of Lamar, will get the start once again for the Ravens at home. In this game, by the way, Baltimore is favored -3.5. That line seems about right, I think. And so my thing going into this game is for Pittsburgh, is there a letdown? Coming off of sort of the Big Ben ceremony, like, hey, you know, Ben Roethlisberger, let's honor him in front of Heinz Field. Let's honor him in front of the Steelers fans. One more go-around. But Ben threw it for 123 yards. Like, he was bad. Like, it was a great ceremony, and Pittsburgh did a great job, and they got an unbelievable fan base. Come on, man. He threw for 123 yards. So against a Ravens defense, which has a bad secondary, I get it, and Steelers are getting Deontay Johnson back, I got the Baltimore Ravens winning this game 21-16 in a close one. Tyler Huntley leads the Ravens on a game-winning drive, and they win it by 5 points. They do cover the spread, and that means the Pittsburgh Steelers will be eliminated from playoff contention. Let's go now to really the one that kind of holds the fate of the Steelers and Ravens game. The Indianapolis Colts taking on the Jaguars, as I mentioned earlier. The Colts have not won in Jacksonville in 7 years. 6 straight losses to Jacksonville. Who has the worst team in football? Trevor Lawrence has had the worst rookie season of any of the rookie quarterbacks. That's not debatable. Even Zach Wilson has had his moments. He's been fine in a couple of games, like that win over Tennessee, which is still hard to figure out. That win, or almost win, over Tampa Bay. Zach Wilson played fairly well. I can't think of one game where I'm like, hey, Trevor Lawrence looked good. Not one. Not one. And so I get it, the history and everything. They haven't won in Jacksonville, and the Colts, by the way, are favored -15. So the bettors love Indianapolis, and so do I. I got the Colts winning this game 28-10 over the Jacksonville Jaguars, which means the Colts will be in the postseason with a 10-7 record. I've said from the start of the season, I did pick Indianapolis to win the division, but they won't do that. But you still don't want to play this team in the playoffs. The Colts clinch a spot in the playoffs, which means the Ravens are eliminated, despite what I believe will be a win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now we're talking about seeding. The Tennessee Titans going on the road to Houston to take on the Texans. And it's time now for our edition, the final time for the regular season. It is time for
betting, man.
I were a betting man, I'm looking at the Titans taking on the Texans. Houston's played well as of late, right? They beat the Chargers. They beat Jacksonville. There's not much to say about that. But Davis Mills has looked good. I said I like Davis Mills more than Mac Jones. Not saying Davis Mills is a franchise quarterback, but it tells you what I think about Mac Jones, who's not a franchise quarterback. But Davis Mills has looked good. But the Tennessee Titans may or may not be getting a king back. That man is King Henry, better known as Derrick Henry, back from IR, back from the broken foot, the best running back in all of football. And if you're in the AFC, you should be terrified because I got the Titans covering a spread that has them favored minus 10.5. That's it, minus 10.5. Titans win this game by 18, 31-13. Tennessee wins it, which means the Titans clinch the number 1 seed in the AFC, which means Cincinnati's out, Chiefs are out, and the Patriots are out as far as getting that number 1 seed in the AFC, which, of course, everybody predicted before the season started, right? We all picked Tennessee to get the number 1 seed. So that means the Titans, good for y'all. Congratulations. You get 1 week off before your playoff game, and the road to Super Bowl 56 goes through Nashville, Tennessee. Let's go to the New York Jets taking on the Buffalo Bills. This game has significance for Buffalo because if they win the division, and they don't have to hope for a Miami Dolphins victory over the New England Patriots. They are favored on the road minus 16. That is a huge spread. A huge spread over a Jets team that played well over the last month. They've had their moments against Tampa, right? Against Jacksonville. A lot of teams have had their moments against Jacksonville. But I don't think the Bills are going to cover. I really don't. 16? I get they're at home, but did Vegas watch Josh Allen last week against the Atlanta Falcons? He was horrible. I mean, horrible. 3 picks, and basically Sean McDermott's like, okay, let's take the ball out of Josh Allen's hands. And by the way, guys, you know I love Josh Allen, but we're going to take the ball out of Josh Allen's hands. We're going to, get it to the run game, which has been good as of late. I think it'll be more of the same. Not bad Josh Allen play necessarily, but they want to establish the run and continue to do that going into the playoffs. They've already clinched a spot, and I believe they would clinch the division. They're not going to cover a 16-point spread. That's absurd. But I got the Buffalo Bills winning 26-19. The Jets finishing with the record I had them at before the season at 4-13. But I will say this about the Jets, and I know a couple of Jets fans. There are some things to be optimistic about. Zach Wilson has cleaned up the turnovers a little bit. He's been good as of late. You have a young roster. You had a lot of injuries this year. Not saying the Jets are going to win the AFC East or even make the playoffs next year, but I did see some growth. That said, the Bills are ready to win now. They're contenders. They're going to win this game, finish at 11-6. They win 26-19 and clinch the AFC East. And so for the New England Patriots, I think they're going to beat the Miami Dolphins 21-20 in a close game. Look, New England's favored minus 6.5. I think that's a big spread. Look at Miami's defense. They've given up 14 points a game in their last 8 games. They're 5-0 in their last 5 at home. And for the New England Patriots, look, historically they've struggled in Miami. Even with Tom Brady, they struggled in Miami. That's kind of always been their house of horrors to a certain degree. And so I think going to Miami, New England, yes, they'll have the division on the line. But by this point, they will know because of Tennessee's victory that I think is going to happen. They will not be the number 1 seed. I do think New England wins it by the skin of their teeth, 21-20. I'll be nice to Mac Jones because I know it's going to be a disaster in the playoffs. So I'll be nice to Mac Jones this week. Mac Jones leads a game-winning drive for the New England Patriots, and they win it 21-20 over the Miami Dolphins, who need to move on from Tua. I love Tua. He's a good dude. It just doesn't work. It doesn't. But I do think they play the Patriots close, and the Patriots, who are already in the playoffs, they won't win the division. Buffalo will do that, but New England wins 21-20. Going now to the Carolina Panthers taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay in this game is favored minus 8. I think Vegas has this at 8 because, look, the AB drama, which I talked about at length to start the show, just a disaster. But if history repeats itself, or at least recent history repeats itself, maybe this fuels the Buccaneers. Yes, it's a target that Tom Brady loses. A vital target, mind you, that Tom Brady loses. But I think in this game, They come out fired up, motivated. Oh, okay, AB's going to talk crap about us. Watch this, Antonia Brown. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cover the spread easily and win by 20. 37-17. Carolina is going in an opposite direction that I thought they were going in before the season. I thought there were some things to build off of. I liked Matt Rule. I'm still not out on Matt Rule, but they need to find a franchise quarterback before I'll really judge him. Sam Darnold ain't that guy. Cam Newton ain't that guy. PJ Walker ain't that guy. It's time to find a new quarterback in Carolina, and they will fall to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 37-17, and Tampa Bay will lock a spot in one of the top 3 seeds. Let's go to now what will decide the NFC West. So we'll start with the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona in this game is favored -6 at home. This could be Russell Wilson's last game as a Seahawk, which is crazy to say. He's been the face of the franchise now for 10 years, for a decade, basically. Russ, and I don't want to talk too much offseason right now, considering we're in the last week of the regular season, but Russ talked about recently, like, he wants to stay in Seattle. He wants to win championships in Seattle. I still think it's a possibility he could request a trade if he sees that the organization simply is not ready to win championships right now. This could be also, and I think more likely, Pete Carroll's last game as the Seattle Seahawks head coach. So there'll be a little bit of added motivation for Seattle now. They know their pick is held by the New York Jets, so there's no like tanking they can do here. Seattle's got a lot of stuff that they're dealing with. For Arizona, new life after their victory over the Cowboys last week. Big road win. They're 8-1 on the road, as a matter of fact. And so Kyler Murray, who played fairly well in that game, at home, favored by 6. I think the Cardinals win this game 27-17 over their division rival. I think Seattle goes home with the 6-11 record, and they may play their next game without Russ and Pete Carroll, possibly. For the Cardinals, they'll finish 12-5, and they will now hope for some help from their division rival, the 49ers, in the next game that I'm going to predict, the America's Game of the Week on Fox. The Los Angeles Rams taking on the San Francisco 49ers, probably the biggest game of the weekend. In this game, in San Francisco, I'm sorry, the game is in Los Angeles. The Rams are favored -4.5. They're favored -4.5. This is the one I flip-flopped on the most. Maybe second most, considering the one that I'm going to predict last between the Chargers and Raiders. Rams are favored -4.5. 49ers have everything to play for. They don't want to have to hope for the New Orleans Saints to lose to Atlanta. They want to say, hey, we control our own destiny. We got to get this win on the road in Los Angeles. And, as has been widely discussed, Kyle Shanahan in his last 5 games against Sean McVay, 5 wins, 0 losses. So I think that factors in a little bit. Sean McVay, to a certain degree, has kind of had Kyle Shanahan, to a certain degree, has kind of had Sean McVay's number. I think it's close. Comes down to the wire. The spread will be covered. The Rams will win this game 27-22. Rams win it 27-22, which means they will clinch the NFC West, and the Cardinals will be a wild card team. And so you ask the question, okay, Rams win the NFC West, toughest division in football, good for them. But what does that mean for the Saints? Because now San Francisco lost. Now the Saints control their own destiny as far as getting in the playoffs. What does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. I'll tell you that this is my upset of the week. The New Orleans Saints will fall to the Atlanta Falcons, and Matty Ice will lead the Falcons to victory by a close score of 24-23 in a game the Saints are favored -3.5. I will tell you why. Atlanta, nothing to lose. Really, the biggest story for the Atlanta Falcons is Kyle Pitts has a chance, if he hasn't already, to get over 1,000 yards receiving. Actually, I think he's reached that. So Kyle Pitts has been a matchup nightmare. The New Orleans Saints got everything to play for. Atlanta's defense in recent weeks has been better. Still not great, but it has been better. They have played, they played better as a collective unit. So against the Saints defense, against Taysom Hill, they've got film on this guy. And if you're asking me if Taysom Hill is going to throw the Saints to victory, I'm not going to take that over Matt Ryan. I'm just not. So I think the Falcons shake up the whole playoff mix. They beat the Saints 24-23, which means despite what I think will be a loss to the Rams, the 49ers will still get in the playoffs. and the New Orleans Saints will be going home. I wonder what Saints 101 thinks about that. He's been in the comments all season long, or at least over the last few weeks, talking trash in these comments. I wonder what he'll think about that. So I think the Saints season will be over, and the San Francisco 49ers will still be in the playoffs. So that's it for the NFC. We got one more game. Game number 272 of the 2021 NFL regular season between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Las Vegas Raiders. The winner goes to the playoffs. The loser's season is over. So, for the Chargers, played great last week, dominated the Denver Broncos. Justin Herbert, once again, shocker, shocker, looked outstanding. For the Raiders, I've said this year that if I had to do an MVP vote, and I said that yesterday, I'd go Brady, Rodgers, Carr. This is very similar. He hasn't been as good as the guy I'm about to mention, but this is very similar to Steph Curry, in my opinion. Because Steph Curry, who I argued like crazy to be MVP last year, people said, oh, he didn't make the playoffs. Did you see the roster he had compared to Nikola Jokic and even Joel Embiid? And what ended up happening is, despite missing the playoffs, Steph ended up finishing second to Nikola Jokic. If I had an MVP vote, Derek Carr is number 3 for me. So the result of this game does not impact what I think about Derek Carr and what he's done this season. I was torn on this one. The Chargers, I picked them to go to the playoffs before the season started because I love Justin Herbert, I love their roster, and I think Brandon Staley has the potential to be a really good NFL head coach. As for the Vegas Raiders, I had them finishing last in the AFC West. That is now not going to happen. But season on the line. They beat the Colts last week. They're at home. Their whole season comes down to one game. And if you had to make me bet who I'm taking in the biggest game of their careers to this point, Justin Herbert or Derek Carr, the answer for me is Justin Herbert. I will take the Chargers. They are favored, by the way, -3 on the road. I will take the Chargers to win this game 28-27 on a walk-off touchdown. The Chargers went on a game-winning drive. Justin Herbert does his thing against a Raiders defense that I've questioned all season long. I know they've been better as of late, but they've been aided by playing some bad or inconsistent quarterbacks. Well, Justin Herbert isn't exactly bad or inconsistent. And so Derek Carr, hats off on an unbelievable season. You overcame more than I've seen quarterbacks overcome in years. All the drama the Raiders have been through, yet they have a chance to make the playoffs, the win. But I do not think it will happen, and I will take the Los Angeles Chargers to win 28-27, which means that the Chargers, of course, we'll show the graphic here. The Chargers will be in the playoffs, and the Raiders will be out. So let me go and show the graphics real quick. If I'm correct on all my picks, well, not necessarily all, if I'm correct on all the games that matter, this will be what the playoffs will look like. Starting in the AFC, the Titans will clinch the number 1 seed. They'll have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And so on Wild Card Weekend, Super Wild Card Weekend, as it was dubbed last year, the Kansas City Chiefs at the 2 seed will take on the Los Angeles Chargers at the 7 seed. Now, that will be very interesting because the Chargers beat Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium earlier this year, and that's where the game would be. It'd be at Arrowhead. The Chargers beat them there. I believe it was week 3. And could have easily beaten Kansas City at home on a Thursday night game a few weeks back. So that will be about as entertaining a 2 versus 7 matchup as we have. I can't wait for that game if it does happen. It will also mean the 3 seed Buffalo Bills, who I believe are going to be the AFC East champs, will take on the 6 seed Indianapolis Colts. Remember the team we've dubbed, like, you don't want to see them. Like, that's what the narrative has been around the Colts really all season long. You don't want to see them in the playoffs. And I think the Colts will get in. They'll beat Jacksonville. They'll take on Buffalo, who I think is going to win the East. And so you'll have a very intriguing matchup. You'll have a rematch, actually, of last year. These two teams played in the postseason in the wild card game a year ago. You'll have Josh Allen in his 3rd straight playoffs, where he played fairly well a year ago, especially against the Colts. That was his best game, was against the Colts. Then you'll have Jonathan Taylor, We all know the running game is as good as Buffalo's has been the last couple of weeks. They've kind of sort of revitalized their running game. Indianapolis, Jonathan Taylor has been a guy who's been discussed for MVP. That will be a game that I think Carson Wentz will have to win. You can't just rely on your running back. When you're going toe-to-toe with Josh Allen, Carson Wentz is going to have to contribute and win this football game for the Colts. So I think that'll be very interesting. And the final wild card game will be the Cincinnati Bengals at the 4 seed taking on the New England Patriots at the 5 seed. That will be how it shakes out. So I think it'll be interesting to say the least, because for Buffalo, you clinch the division and obviously you pass the Bengals. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, who has been on fire and fuego, with Jamar Chase taking on Mac Jones, who I've not been high on all season long. I'm still not high on. And that New England Patriots defense led by Bill Belichick. That will be a very interesting matchup because, listen, without Tom Brady, Bill Belichick has won one playoff game. So that will be what the AFC looks like. So looking down the list, 1 through 7 for the podcast audience, 1 through 7. Titans, Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, Patriots, Colts, Chargers. The Titans will get the bye. The Chiefs will take on the Chargers. The Bills will take on the Colts, and the Bengals will take on the Patriots. That'll be very interesting. Now look at the NFC. We already knew the Packers last week. They clinched it in their win over Minnesota. So like I said, the Packers have nothing to play for this week. They're locked in. It's guaranteed. They will get next week off. Wildcard weekend, the Packers will have to play. They get a first-round bye, the lone first-round bye. And if my results from this week do end up happening, the Los Angeles Rams will take on the Philadelphia Eagles. That'll be fun because you got an Eagles team which has an identity. And we got a lot of playoff teams. Some even contending for a Super Bowl that really don't know their identity. And so for Philadelphia, they'll get in the playoffs. I think they'll lose to Dallas tomorrow. And I think the 49ers will get in and have the tiebreaker over Philly because they beat Philly in week 2. It shows every game matters. It goes to show you. But you'll have a Rams team who has all the pressure in the world against an Eagles team that, hey, nobody thought we'd be here. We got nothing to lose. Weather won't be an issue. Of course, the game will be played at SoFi Stadium. Weather won't be an issue. Matt Stafford, again, everything to lose. Jalen Hurts, I got to lose, man. People didn't think, I was a franchise quarterback. I just got this team to the playoffs. I think that'll be very interesting. At the 3 versus 6 matchup, you would have Tom Brady and the defending champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on Tom Brady's childhood favorite team, the San Francisco 49ers. Will it be Jimmy Garoppolo? Will it be Trey Lance? We don't know. Jimmy G's questionable for this week. Again, I don't know. I don't know who's going to play between he and Trey Lance. I think regardless, they're going to lose to the Rams this weekend. But I would definitely favor Tampa without a question. At home, defending champs. San Francisco's beat up. I think the defensive line could give Tampa's O-line some problems and get in the face of Tom Brady and pressure him and maybe keep it close for a while. But I just think with Brady, with Leonard Fournette, coming back from IR, that's huge for Tampa. And he still has a ton of weapons. When in doubt, you go to 87. You go to Gronk. You've got Cameron Brate, obviously, who's healthy. You got Mike Evans, who's got a hamstring issue, but that's still Mike Evans. And you have a plethora of other guys who Tom Brady has elevated. And then finally, you would have a rematch of last week's game, the 4 seed versus the 5 seed, my Dallas Cowboys taking on the Arizona Cardinals. I would like Dallas in that matchup for the simple fact that, look, wanting to get motivation, wanting to get revenge at home, albeit against a more healthy Cardinals team at this point. But I think Dallas will come out with more of a sense of urgency. And if you ask me, it's kind of like the Justin Herbert, Derek Carr thing. When it comes down to it, who do I trust more, Dak Prescott or Kyler Murray? You guys know who the heck I'm going with. I'm going with Dak. I'm going with Dak Prescott. And so I think that'd be the playoffs, man, are going to be crazy. I think we've had more interesting last weeks of the regular season, but I'll get into that later. Just 1 through 7, NFC for the podcast audience, 1 through 7. Packers, Rams, Buccaneers, Cowboys, Cardinals, 49ers, Eagles. That, in my opinion, after Sunday night's game, will be the NFC playoff picture. And like I said, we've had better last weeks of the regular season. We've had it where it's just all jumbled up. This team has a chance. This team has a chance. Not a ton of teams got a shot, or at least a realistic shot. But the playoffs, on the other hand, are going to be awesome. I've never been more excited, not just because my team's in it. I've never been more excited for a playoffs, ever. ever, ever, ever. I've never been more excited for an NFL playoffs to come around, because I think, put up the AFC teams. I think you got I think you got 4 teams in that conference that I think legitimately could get to the Super Bowl. Tennessee, Kansas City, Buffalo, and I think I'm still not going to sell my stock on the Colts. I think they could get in if Carson Wentz doesn't screw it up, and that's a big if. But those are the 4 teams in the NFC, man. It's wide open. I could see the top 5 teams getting to the Super Bowl. The Packers, the Rams, the Buccaneers, the Cowboys, the Cardinals. I could see any of those teams getting to Los Angeles. Inglewood, California, although the game may not even happen there. It may happen in Dallas, but we'll see. But again, it's as wide open a playoffs as we've seen in a very, very long time. Is there a prohibitive favorite in the AFC? Nope. The team that people favor to win the AFC, the Chiefs, they're the 2 seed. And they likely will be the 2 seed, and they'll likely have to play in wild card weekend while the Titans get to sit back, chill, and watch film. And then the NFC, people are like, oh, Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers has struggled in the postseason. Tom Brady, defending champs, but they're beat up. The Rams got pressure. I'm telling you, I can't wait. I'm like a kid on Christmas. It's going to be amazing. John got a few comments here. John just says, JJ coming back for y'all's playoff game. JJ, I'm trying to think of who you'd be referring to, John. He says, for y'all's playoff game. Oh, J.J. Watt. You're right. My bad. J.J. Watt. Yes, he was designated off IR. That's going to be interesting, because J.J. Watt we thought was out for the year, and he could come back and wreak havoc with what's already an elite Cardinals defensive line. That'd be interesting. Okay, yeah. Philip makes a good point. He says, I got the Raiders. Chargers always choke under pressure. Yeah, that they do. Philip, as my man Ryan Flowers always says, the Chargers are going to be the Chargers, right? Like in the biggest games, and it's not even a Justin Herbert problem. Like this is kind of in the Chargers DNA. The biggest games, they absolutely collapse. It may happen, but the same can be said about the Raiders. So I think it's an equal playing field. I really do think that this is going to come down to the quarterbacks. And as much as I love Derek Carr, and I would put him in the top 3 for MVP, Justin Herbert is he's been great. He's been great all season long. Absolutely. Barry says, you just care about the bet. You can't fool me, LMA. No, I really do think if things go right, for the Cowboys, my biggest concern is the coach and the offensive coordinator, for that matter, and the kicker. That's really like top 3 concerns for the Cowboys. Maybe we should do this next week. Like our biggest concern for each playoff team. Like once the bracket is set, I'll do a segment on that next week. Like maybe on Monday or Thursday, probably Thursday. Like the biggest weakness of every playoff team. For Dallas, I got like 2 to choose from: the kicker or the coach. We'll see. Because even the running game, if you match up against the Packers, if you survive the wild card game, which does absolutely scare me, if you survive the wild card game, get to Lambeau Field, I'm kind of relaxed. Like for real, because Aaron Rodgers will just have to watch the game from the sideline. Because as inconsistent as the running game has been with Zeke and Tony Pollard, Green Bay's made a lot of bad rushing teams look like, Derrick Henry. I mean, that's what the Packers defense has done all year. I think they're kind of soft, to be honest with you. So, yeah, that's it. That's what I think is going to happen. And so with that, final prediction show of the regular season. It was fun. That was fun. I enjoyed that. So with that, that is all the time we have for today's show. Be sure to catch Carving It Up on Monday, and there's going to be some big announcements, some big changes on Monday to the show. I'll still be here. Don't worry about it. 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Time's not going to change. On Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. If you've been listening to the Carving It Up podcast, we appreciate that as well. You've been listening on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. So I hope everybody has a great weekend. Enjoy some football. By the way, national championships on Monday night. I look forward to predicting that between Georgia and Alabama, the rematch. So it's going to be a fun weekend full of football. Let's go Cowboys. Always wear my Cowboys t-shirt for every Friday predicting show. So playoffs for next week. Let's go. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out.